Hello and welcome to this presentation on posture and core muscles. This presentation was put together because of some really common questions that I get asked as a physiotherapist, yoga teacher and Pilates instructor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can go through this brief presentation. So a lot of people ask me, what are my core muscles? How do I activate them? And there's lots of misunderstanding around that. And it's also understanding what good posture actually is, because we get told different things, from sit up straight, shoulders back, stop slouching, to what actually does it look like and feel like to have good posture, and how are these two things related? So the purpose of this resource is to help you to understand a little more about posture, what good posture is, and why it's important, and just to clarify some of those misperceptions or misconceptions about posture. So let's start with posture. So posture means the way that we hold our bodies, the position in which we hold our bodies. And here is an example of different postures, and we would consider these to be static postures, meaning that you hold your body still. So static postures include sitting, standing still, lying down, sleeping would be a static posture as well. And you can see that there's more optimal posture, which we'll talk about. And then there's less optimal postures, which I'm sure we've all felt ourselves sliding into time to time. So Kendall and McCreary, two physios, published a book a long time ago, and they identified 4 key types of posture. And there's lots of variations on these, but I think these are widely recognized as commonly non-optimal patterns. So here, this is ideal alignment. If you can't read this, it says kyphosis, lordosis. So a kyphosis is an increase in a bend in the spine this way, and a lordosis is that way. So it's just increasing the normal spinal curve. So because our spine should have an S curve in them, like in the ideal posture. Moving along to the third posture we've got, it's a flat back posture. And then the fourth type I've identified is a sway back posture, where the thoracic kyphosis is increased, but the lordosis isn't. And so these postures are based around the position of the spinal curves, but as you can appreciate, your head, your trunk, and your pelvis all weigh a fair amount of mass. So if you change the organization of these, you're going to change how your body loads related to gravity. And we can all appreciate, I think, from a young age, we know that if things are stacked up more efficiently, they stay there easily. If we don't stack things well, the tower falls. And our body is essentially, you could think of zones of mass that we can hold them a bit skew if they don't have to be perfectly stacked, but that comes at a cost. So ideal static posture, like I said, is based on the neutral spinal curves, and it's the most efficient alignment of body regions against gravity. But then there's also dynamic posture, which is the position that we hold our bodies as we move. This is an amazing picture of Usain Bolt. And you can really appreciate that even though he's moving, he's still got a really great alignment of his body. He's just tilted his whole body in space, and he can generate power so effectively because of his posture. But what you need for running, what you need for bending and lifting and walking and doing yoga are all going to be slightly different, but there are some key principles that you can apply across everything. But I just wanted to say that dynamic posture is related to the task at hand, like what ideal dynamic posture is, but it still relates to the ideal alignment of body regions, because muscles are designed to work well in certain regions, so about the middle 2/3 of their range. Joints are also easier and harder for your nervous system to control in certain directions of motion. So our movement requires a graded and coordinated muscle activation. It's not just a matter, good posture isn't just switch on all your muscles and hold it still in this one position, because that's going to also lead to problems. And so why even bother achieving good posture? Well, basically force transmission through the tissues, such as your bones and muscles and ligaments and fascia, so all the soft tissues, will occur in different, will respond to load. So if you're sitting with your chin poking forward, you're going to load certain structures in a way that can make them painful. It also takes more energy. If your muscles are constantly having to work to hold you up, whereas gravity could do that job if you were stacked nicely, then you're going to be more tired because you're using more energy. And so basically, if I could give you 3 reasons why you should worry about good posture, it would be you'll feel less tired, that your muscles will move more efficiently so you'll feel stronger, and then the joints and muscles are loaded in a better way. They can function better. So you're at less likelihood of experiencing pain, or you'll find it easier to rehab from pain. So how do we achieve good posture? I think there's a 4-step process to it. First of all, we need to understand it, what it is and why we're doing it. Then a lot of us have to feel it in our own body. And I think posture is a key thing. You need to know what good posture for you feels like, because if you think back to those different posture types before, that to achieve a more optimal alignment, each of those 4 body types would have to do something different. So good posture is going to feel different depending on what kind of posture you're starting with. And then you need to train your body to make it automatic. It's one thing to have good posture when you're thinking about it, and then you go to eat a sandwich and your posture's bad again. So you need to make it an automatic habit. And that's just through the principles of neuroplasticity. So your brain's ability to learn new tasks, which is fantastic, and improve our endurance to be able to hold those good patterns for longer. So holding good posture while you're standing or walking is going to be maybe a little bit less challenging than if you're running. And perhaps you can hold good form and good posture to a certain speed, but when you go above a certain speed, your form starts to collapse a little bit, and then you're at more risk of those injuries over certain distances or certain speeds. So let's now move forward to understand core muscles and their role in this. I'll just go back a sec. So a key part of achieving good posture is that the muscles that are responsible for holding you up are working efficiently. And many of these things that influence your posture also will influence your core muscles. So by that, I mean, if you've had pain, previous injuries, surgeries, accidents, emotions, habits and hobbies, work, pregnancy, birth and delivery, all of these things might cause pain. They may change our postural patterns in a different way, or they may turn off or alter our muscle activation patterns so that our core muscles just aren't firing like they used to, or maybe they're just not as coordinated as they used to. And because of that, that influences our posture. I don't like the term core muscles. I'm going to keep using it simply because it's kind of in the common language now. And if I say core muscles, you have a general idea about it. But I do think it's a widely used term with a variety of meanings, and it's poorly understood. I'll go with it for now, but maybe we'll be able to come up with a better terminology to use. But generally, the core muscles are taken to be the muscles of the low back and the pelvis. So let's explore that a little bit further. So one of the reasons I don't like the term core is this is a cross section. So we've taken a slice through a person here. And so this is the spine at the back, and this is your back, and this is your the rectus muscles at the front. And what you can see if you look at, when you say core, it makes me think the very center, deepest part of your body. Well, if we look at that, it's actually probably your aorta and your inferior vena cava. And I don't think they have a key role in our posture. They probably influence it in some way. But yeah, that's one reason why I don't like the term core, because I think it's a little bit inaccurate. What we're talking about more, I'll just go back again, is the abdominal muscles. So you've got your rectus muscles here, your obliques out here, and the deepest layer, your transverse abdominis, and they have connections in around your spine. So it's more, like I said, this corset that we talk about with your core, and we'll look at that a bit closer. So if we go and look at the front now, so this is the abdominal wall, and this is a beautiful, very clear and clean picture, and it shows the abdominal muscles as 4 layers, whereas in reality, especially down this lower region of the abdomen, the fibers do tend to blend a lot, especially between transversus and internal oblique. But just to give an idea, so this is your rectus muscle, this is rectus abdominis. Down the middle, it's joined by a fascia called the linea alba. And in pregnancy, where these muscles stretch, the linea alba gets a little bit wider, and that's where you can get that muscle, that separation of your abdominal muscles. It doesn't just happen in pregnancy, men can experience it too, and lots of straining through the abs. So overstretching or overworking the abdominal wall can lead to issues here in terms of rectus separation. And I also want to point out that the attachment point for rectus is onto your ribs at the front and down to your pelvis and your pubic bone at the front as well. Whereas then if we go to the next layer, we've got the external obliques, which come down in this diagonal fashion and then attach up onto the ribs. They go at least as high as I think the 6th or 7th rib, maybe even the 5th. They go pretty high. So they go just below the nipple height in this direction. And then deeper than that, with the fibers in the opposite direction, we have internal oblique. And again, that covers the whole abdominal wall. And then deeper to that is transversus abdominis. So lots of time that gets shortened to TAs or transversus, but transversus is the one that is the deepest layer. And we'll see a little bit more about why that's important in a sec. I did just want to point out though, that the region of the spine, this region here, the rib cage region of your spine, is responsible for sending nerves to switch on those abdominal muscles. So if we look here, if we go back a second, these muscles get switched on by nerves that come from this area of your spine. So if you're one of those people who have done core muscle strengthening till the cows come home and you just can't seem to get stronger, can't activate your core, if anyone comes in and says that to me in the clinic, I have a high suspicion that there's some dysfunction through their thorax, which could be driving a decreased ability to effectively activate your core. So just keep that in mind, that the nerves from this area of the spine are what are switching on the abs at the back. But we would be very remiss if we just talked about the abs. We'll finish talking about the abdominal connections in a second. I just wanted to point out here that the core is almost like a canister or a can. So it has a front and it has the back muscles, but it also has a top in the diaphragm, which attaches to the last thoracic vertebra, T12, as well as the top 2 lumbar vertebrae. And then at the bottom, we have our pelvic floor, which you can think of it running from your pubic bone at the front to your tailbone at the back. And then essentially there are fascial connections, which means it then runs from your right hip to your left hip across here. So it's a sheet of muscles which helps support our abdominal organs, and it's key in keeping us continent, as well as stabilizing the pelvis. And if you think about that whole can and what would happen if you contracted everything, think of it this way. I love this quote from Bruce Lee. Notice that the stiffest tree is the most easily cracked, while the bamboo or willow survives by bending in the wind. I just think he had such beautiful movement. He had speed, he had agility, he had flexibility, and it was just amazing to watch. I've started getting into the old Kung Fu movies. But you can appreciate, if I go back a slide, think of this whole zone. Imagine if you just got really good at switching on your core. What would that look like? And what would that feel like if from hip to hip, front and back, your ribs and your abdominal wall and your back were just all switched on? You'd be lucky if you could walk as well as the Tin Man, I reckon. And I don't think if you think about how high these muscles attach onto your ribs, I don't think you'd be breathing very well. And I certainly don't think you'd have much spring in your step. So what we want is to think more of Bruce Lee and think that learning good posture, and the whole reason we learn to activate our core muscles is so that we can move more easily, more efficiently, more effective. It's not just to get a strong core. The strong core is a sense of feeling strength and being able to do the things that you love. So let's just loop back and go back to finish this point on the abdominal wall. So if we look here, so this is the rectus muscles at the front. I call them your six-pack muscles because that's what everyone wants to get, a better six-pack. So that's why everyone does crunches. You've got your external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus. And if we follow transversus around, that one and the internal oblique attach into a fascia in the back of the spine. I think I've got another slide on this in a sec, which then envelopes these spinal muscles. So when you contract transversus and internal oblique properly, then it's going to create a nice stiffening of this, or stiffening, activation, tensioning of this whole system, which supports your spine. Now I'll have a go at playing this video and we'll see what happens. This is an ultrasound of a transversus and so here's transversus contracting, here's internal oblique. Let me play that again because it went kind of quickly. So I'll go back to the start. So this is an ultrasound. The ultrasound head is at the front of the abs here. You've got external oblique, you've got internal oblique, and then you've got transversus. So when it contracts, it should shorten this way, which tensions across the linea alba at the front and creates that nice tension all the way around the spine. So here I go, I play it again. So there's a contraction of transversus, but it's also getting internal oblique here. Sometimes we only want this one firing. Pause there. So often when we start out, we try and really isolate transversus to get working. But if you're doing something that requires more demands, then it's okay if you start to use internal oblique. It really depends on the task, and you just want the ability to generate this tension when you need it. So let's see if I can go back to my slideshow now. Great. So again, this is just highlighting, it just breaks down a little bit more. Transversus and internal oblique come into the fascia that supports your spine. So therefore, if we contract this effectively, we get that support system. So when someone's had back pain, we know that transversus and some of these other deep spinal muscles switch off. It basically creates a bracing system so that, because you don't want more compression and tension around a joint that's injured. So your body goes, okay, I'm just going to switch on everything around that core. Think of the core, those core muscles, the pelvic floor, the diaphragm, abs. If you've ever had an acute onset of back pain, you'll know the impact that it has on your continence, on your breathing, on your ability to move. That's your body going, keep still, I'm going to protect you. When the pain's all resolved, when the tissue healing has taken place, I'll let you start moving again. The only problem is sometimes we've picked up some bad habits along the way and we forget how to effectively switch on transversus and pelvic floor in a coordinated way. And I liken it to an orchestra. I'm not the only one who said this, but if you think of an orchestra, everyone has to play the right part at the right time. If anyone plays too loud, plays the wrong note, you don't just want the tuba just blasting away the whole time. Oh, this is like a string orchestra. Anyway, you get the idea. You don't want the violin screeching away the whole time. You don't want the bass just overpowering everyone. I think you get my point. We need coordination. We need to work together. That's how our body is designed to function. Because it's about options to move in lots of different ways, the right muscle in the right amount. These beautiful dancers could not achieve this just by switching on their core. So let's talk about how do we achieve good posture, and knowing that the aim of all this, of good posture and switching on our core muscles, is for easeful movement. So I'll get my words working again shortly. So the key to success is that we want to learn the principles of good movement, turn them into habits, and then practice them through a variety of exercises in different positions so that we've got the option to use that new variety through anything we do in our life. And that just sums it up as well there. Because what you need for this activity is different than what you need for this. And you can't achieve those simply by doing planks. Planks are good at getting you to co-contract all your core. Like maybe you're wanting to switch on pelvic floor, diaphragm, abdominal wall, and back muscles, a plank would be a great exercise to do. But I would argue that it's not going to help you do the things that you love unless you only love to plank. So let's prepare ourselves for a little practice. So I do just have to put a disclaimer that just like any exercise program, consult your GP or health professional. Because even though this is a really gentle exercise, I would be remiss if I did not mention that sometimes the problem is not that you are weak. The problem is sometimes these muscles or parts of them are already overactive. This can be true for the pelvic floor. It can be true for your back muscles and parts of your abdominal wall at the front. So you may experience this as feeling stiff yet weak. Stiff and tight, but a little bit vulnerable. So I'm going to go through how to activate your core muscles as an educational video, but this is not meant to be a diagnosis. So you can still have issues with continence if your pelvic floor is overactive. So I do strongly suggest that if you've got any questions, if anything I've said resonates with you, come and see my amazing team here and get a personalized posture assessment and advice about what you need. Because just briefly, what we believe is movement is medicine. If you move well, you feel well. We want to get you moving well and therefore you'll feel good. So the goal of therapeutic exercise is that, like I mentioned before, I'm going to keep saying it. You start with good posture. You learn to switch on the right muscles. And I should have put there, switch off the wrong muscles. So you're getting this balance. So you want it at the right amount for the task that you've got ahead of you. So I'd like to practice now, if we may, a couple cues that we sometimes use in our Pilates classes, or you might have come across. So if someone says to switch on your core, this is what I would take it to mean. I would assume that they're telling me that I need to activate the muscles of my pelvic floor and my lower abdomen. But it needs to be done in a way that targets the lower abs, because the upper abs are attaching onto our ribs, and we still need to breathe and move and twist. So we're going to target there. So let's try number one. I'm going to do a pelvic floor contraction. And you may have been told different ways, but let's just pick one or two of my favorites that I find work really well. So I encourage you to start in any comfortable position. If you're just uncomfortable to start, then it's going to be harder to get the right pattern. So for some people, this is sitting up on a firmer surface. Other people, it might be lying down. So I'd like you to put your fingertips on your pubic symphysis, so right at the front of your pelvis here. Now imagine a line from your tailbone at the back to your pubic bone at the front. And then see if you can squeeze the muscles between there and think of shortening that distance. What you should feel is a contraction, almost like you're stopping yourself doing a wee, and probably also stopping yourself from passing wind. That's the feeling that you'll get. A gentle lift up and then relax, and you should feel that soften. Now, if you didn't feel any contraction, it doesn't mean that it's not contracted. It could be a sign that it's already contracted. So if that's the case, focus on relaxing this line, pubic bone to tailbone. So again, try one more. We'll breathe in, exhale, relax and breathe out. Maybe hold the breath out for a second. Contract pubic bone to tailbone. Keep that lift, and now see if you can breathe. And you want to breathe normally and naturally and still be able to keep that lift. So at the end of your exhale, now relax and see if you felt that relax. So if you felt the relaxation the first time but not the second time, potentially the breathing just made it a little bit more complex and your nervous system was like, I don't know what to do. Or maybe the endurance just dropped away because you held it for longer. Now what often happens when you activate your pelvic floor is you do get some activation of the abdominal wall. But sometimes we want to target more the abs. So let's try a different cue, focusing on your abdominal wall. So from the left and right sides of your pelvis, if you put your hands on your hips and then bring down a bit lower, I might stand up, see if we can see. Okay, so if you put your hands on your hips, but then come down a bit. So my belly button is here, my pubic bone's down there. It's this zone across there that you're trying to contract. Imagine that is like a hammock. And if you're already pregnant, then it's simply a hammock going under your baby. What you're going to try and do is lift that hammock up, or pull this point, try and use your muscle contraction to pull your hip points apart. And what you should feel is a drawing in from belly button to pubic bone, not above your belly button. So let's try that with breathing. So you can exhale, we'll take a breath. When you gently breathe out, hold the breath out, and then try engaging those left and right sides of your pelvis, drawing it in, and then be able to breathe again. At the end of a breath, relax, and you want to feel that that's easier. You want to feel that relaxation. So those core activation cues are what I would think of in terms of if I asked you to switch on your core. Now, some exercises in yoga require more strength, and I might get you to think of activating your pelvic floor and your lower abdominal muscles. You know, if a forward bend or a backward bend, or you're twisting, maybe you need a little bit more support there. Have a play around with those exercises and see how they go. So just as a summary, what you should feel for both of them is that your muscles activate in those zones. You should feel for the pelvic floor a lifting sensation in the pelvic floor, or a tightening in the lower abdominal region. but you should still be able to breathe and still be able to move. And it's not just a matter of on and off. You need to have options to do it in different ways. But you shouldn't feel pain. You shouldn't be short of breath. You shouldn't feel your pelvis actually tilt or move. Your position should actually stay the same. And what I should have mentioned at the start is do this in a neutral position, which is what we've got a basic sequence that we'll go through later. And so do this in a neutral position. And what I would also say is your movements may feel stronger or easier when you're engaging your core versus when you're not. And that will make more sense when we actually get into some movement. So I don't want you to feel gripping in your buttocks or your inner thigh, because that could be your body's attempt at trying to use other muscles to stabilize around your pelvis and your low back. So I'd like to, just to come to an end now, I'm going to summarize with a few things for you to think of from this presentation, so that good movement doesn't end with just getting a strong core. Though learning to activate these muscles well is a good place to start. So what I mean by that is just planking, just doing sit-ups, or just getting switching your core muscles for the sake of doing that won't necessarily mean that you can do the things you love. But often if you've had, and I went through those list of things, pain, injury, surgery, habits, postures, emotions, a whole variety of things can switch off those core muscles. So if we start with learning how to activate them well, many people find that helps. If it doesn't, that's still not, doesn't mean give up. It means dive a little bit deeper. There's many other influences that require discussion and assessment. So like I mentioned, if you've been doing your pelvic floor exercise, your core, your abdominal wall contractions, and you've tried lots of things, but you just can't seem to get a strong core, I would be looking at other regions that are influencing your core, which especially is the thorax. It's right nearby. It's a huge mass. It's 20% of the length of your body. There's many muscle connections as well as those nerve influences. So I would be looking there, but I would be looking actually at your whole body and what else is happening somewhere else, which is making it hard for you to find your core. Because really a strengthening program should take 6 to 8 weeks. That's how long it takes to get changes in muscle pattern. So if you've been going for 2-3 months and still not getting results, then it requires a further assessment. So what we talked about today are the core muscles of our pelvis, lumbar spine and trunk. But we actually have muscles which function in a similar way for other regions of our body. So I like to say we have core muscles for our neck, which get affected in things like whiplash, but also in posture and other types of trauma. Like our shoulder, the core muscles of our shoulder would be our rotator cuff. So in our thorax, actually, if I thought you needed to get stronger core muscles around your thorax, I would give you different exercises than we've gone through today. So this is another reason why I'm not in love with the term core. So you could think of them as stability muscles throughout our body. So if these core exercises don't work for you, there are many reasons why. And finally, just want you to take home the fact that sometimes muscles may be too tight or too active, and maybe we need to learn to release them instead. And the key is balance and coordination of muscle groups. It's not just more. So just to summarize, every human body is different and varies in shape and size, as well as muscularity, flexibility, fat deposition. So it's not surprising that very few people actually exhibit the ideal posture. There's many types of deviations from the neutral spine, which may be either temporary or permanent, and sometimes exercise alone can improve these. But oftentimes, posture is an indication of a loss of movement variability, which means we get stuck in certain patterns, and then we're always overstressing the same structures, and sometimes requires further assessment on where to start. So as physios, we get really good at identifying dysfunctions throughout the body, both in standing, but also in dynamic movements. And we try here at Physio Yoga to really determine what's causing your symptoms, but also where the dysfunctions are coming from, because we want to know what's the true cause and what's just a compensation. So, and also what these pictures I hope represent is what we all want to do with our bodies is different as well. So I wouldn't give the same exercises to all these people, because what they come to the assessment with and what they want to do is all completely different. So the next step for you is we are going to be offering a free basics program, which goes through some more. So we talked about at the start the four steps, and a couple of them were understanding what good posture is, and then experiencing it, and then turning it into a habit. So this here is so that you can kind of understand the theory behind what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. Then the basics program helps you to activate and experience that in your body in the privacy of your own home. But then if you want to take that a step further, that's kind of going to be, I guess, assumed knowledge, or we're going to work with that with our Pilates classes. So Pilates and our yoga classes, then take those principles and take them a step further and apply them through lots of different movement patterns. And finally, if anything I've said today resonates with you or raises questions for you, please do reach out to us on our website, physioyogastrath.com.au. We have online bookings, we have telehealth, and we have face-to-face bookings, of course. So we're here to help support you find movement is medicine, because we want you to be moving and feeling well, and achieving all the things you want to in your life. So I hope you've found this a helpful presentation. I hope it's answered some questions and maybe relayed or mislaid or fixed. Lose my words again. Hope it's fixed some misunderstandings that you might have had. And I really look forward to you reaching out to us, asking any questions, and joining us for our online classes or our studio classes when they can start again. Have a great day, guys. Bye.